Listen, God gives us in our heart a desire for the thing that He wants for our life. So the pathway that He has picked just for you, He gives you that yearning to do it, right? So if you're yearning for a radiology, you can be pretty certain that's the Holy Spirit leading you. But your job is to stick to it. And don't get discouraged about the hard. My daughter graduated from Lano High School in 2019, and she wants to be an endocrinologist, so hormone doctor.
Yeah.
And so she went to Texas A&M. It's not conservative like it used to be. It's very, very liberal, maybe even more liberal than UT. But she got a degree in nutrition, major nutrition, minor neuroscience. And so, because she wants to know how the food affects the chemistry of the brain, because that's what endocrinology is, the brain hormones and how it affects the body. And so she had 8 friends when she started A&M that wanted to be doctors. They all dropped out. Over the course of the 4 years, every one of them said, it's too hard. It's too hard.
Wow.
So she's, yesterday, 2 weeks from yesterday, will be her last day of first year of medical school. And she said it's been the hardest year of her life, but you can do it. You just keep going forward, you will do it. So whatever you choose, don't ever be discouraged about the hard part, because God will shepherd you through for His path for your life. So don't be discouraged.
I feel like that's a good segue into what you do, because what you do is hard and you face a lot of backlash with it. So would you just briefly describe what you do and how you got into it?
Well, okay, so I'm 57 and I've always known Jesus, but I didn't necessarily live for Jesus. Okay, so I thought I did. And in 2021, so almost 4 years ago, about June or July, I started hearing about bad books in the Lano library, in the Lano Public Library. So I was like, how bad can they be, right? I mean, you ask yourself the question, if it's in a children's section, it can't be that bad, it just can't. That was what my brain told me. And so literally it took me until November 10th of 2021. I was getting my hair cut, and the young lady that cuts my hair was like, have you seen the pictures? So she had pictures from some of the books on her phone. And I was like, my hair started on fire. It hasn't stopped since. So my head's still up. And so I could not believe what I saw. So I went home for my haircut that evening, and I wrote a letter, an email to the judge, all the commissioners the county commissioners from Lano County that I had emails for, every teacher I knew, every parent I knew, every business owner, and every pastor. And I said, y'all, my eyes have been opened. This is a spiritual battle, and Satan is after our children. Our children are under attack. We need to do a weekly prayer vigil, maybe at the courthouse on the square, and let's build a hedge of protection around our children. And maybe it was over 100 people, but I think one person answered.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was full speed ahead. I was very shocked, and I started meeting with the judge and the commissioners. I started kind of auditing the library. I didn't really know what the battle looked like. I was just barely in it, and so I started with Matt Krause's book. So there was a representative named Matt Krause from North Texas, Frisco area, that in 2021, he sent a letter to every school district in Texas and said, I have discovered bad books, and here's a list. His list had about 800 books on it. I don't remember exactly how many. And I had friends that were in the public library that worked there, and so they would check the catalog, and they came up with a list of 62 books. So I sent the 62 books with a picture from my friend's cell phone. I said, send it to me. And she said, I can't send it to you. I'll be sending porn. And I said, good point. So I said, put it on your phone, and then I took a photo with my phone.
Yeah.
And then I attached that photo to the email. And so I started working, and in April of 2022, so about 3 years ago, 7 residents of Llano County sued the judge, all 4 commissioners, the library director, me, because I was, I advised them of what was in. So if you tell someone that something bad is going to happen, you're responsible. Isn't that crazy? Crazy. It's so crazy. So, that's how God used this, and people would send me, I would get phone messages, death threats. I got letters mailed to my house, death threats mailed to my house, and people are very attached to this content. Some of it's ideological, but some people, they're willing literally to go and kill someone to keep this content. It's very satanic. This is a spiritual battle.
Yes.
And so friends would call me that found out about it. Like, I moved from McAllen to Llano County. And so my friends in McAllen are calling, can you check our school? We want to know about our school. So, of course, right after I started finding bad stuff in the Llano Public Library, Llano is rural heaven. I think we were 89% Trump vote in the last election. Very, very, very conservative and very rural. The town of Llano has 3,000 people. Very small.
Super small.
We just got our 5th traffic light. It drives me crazy. I'm like, I catch it every time. So we're a small community. And yet, I looked in my daughter's high school library, where she had graduated, and all the same books and worse.
I can't even imagine finding that in your own kids' library. That must have been so scary.
So scary. And people would ask me, even today, why did you wait until now to bring it to the attention of people? Why didn't you do it when your daughter was there? I did not know. If I had known, I would either had to pull her from school or take away privilege to be in the library. Because it's terrifying. Some of the books I have found, there's one book, there's quite a few, but the first one I found was the 2022 Book of the Year for 12-year-old children. Okay, so it's called Great Graphic Novel of the Year, 2022. But in the very front, in the publisher's page, every book has when it was published, who's the publisher, who's the editor, all that stuff. So on that page, there is a disclaimer that says, there's 2 authors. It says, the authors and publisher expressly disclaim responsibility from any adverse effects which may result from the use of information contained in this book. Right underneath that, Random House children's books.
For 12-year-olds.
For 12-year-olds, and they have a disclaimer. So you're thinking, it's very obvious they know what they're doing is detrimental and harmful to children. Otherwise, you wouldn't put a disclaimer. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that would absolve them, right? Just because like Roundup, they had disclaimers. Mm-hmm. It doesn't absolve you. But the fact that you put it there, that your product is harmful.
Yeah.
And so that opened my eyes. I take that book all around. There's just all kind of stuff. There's one book that I have that has 75 QR codes in it. And so it's also for 12-year-olds. So imagine, you get it from your school library, 12-year-old, whatever. And what are you going to do when you see QR codes? You guys probably love QR codes. I hate QR codes, right? But know your audience. Mm-hmm. Kids love QR codes. They go. One takes you to Planned Parenthood to schedule an abortion. One takes you to a sex shop where you can buy sex toys. One takes you to a live sex video. I'm like, what are we doing? We cannot do this. This is not appropriate for our children. Not even for adults.
No, for no one.
But, that's not my battle. Mm-hmm. Thank goodness. At least I have an easier battle than that one. And so I will never stop trying to keep this content out of children's access. Another very interesting thing that I discovered last year in June, I went to San Antonio. I've been to every school district in San Antonio. I think there's 9 school districts. And at one of them, this pastor from Houston came. I often travel with pastors. And so he brought this young man with him who I had never met before. And we usually meet ahead of time, and I will pass out, I call them book reports that I write from the book. So I read a book, and I jot down the page number and an exact excerpt that is harmful. So I have them. And so I always bring 10 or 15, and I asked this young man, who was young to me, okay, to y'all he's an old man, but he's about 40.
Okay.
And so I said, are you comfortable reading about really sexually explicit excerpts, or would you rather read about drug addiction, suicide, something else? And he's like, I have been in prison for 10 years. I can read anything. So I said, great. So I gave him a really bad book to read. And when it was his turn to address the school board, he said, he began to read. He just introduced himself and he began to read. And he read about 2 sentences and he began to weep. And the room had about 200 people. It was dead silent because he was weeping into the microphone. And you could hear his anguish, and it was like, your heart went out. And he collected himself, and then he apologized to the school board, and he said, forgive me. He said, I have 2 daughters that are 13 and 14, and I am shocked to find that this content is in libraries accessible to our youth. I mean, it's very graphic. And he said, I am shocked that I have to actually come and urge you to remove it. Why is it there in the first place? And he said something that caught my attention. He said, in prison, he said, I spent 10 years in prison. This content is prohibited to prisoners.
Oh my word.
So I said, oh, interesting. So when he was done, at the end of the evening, he came to me and he apologized. And I said, no, you were the most effective speaker tonight. You were the most profoundly effective speaker. And I said, but tell me about the list for prisoners. And he said, well, books with sexually explicit content are not allowed in Texas prison. So I said, okay. So I called my senator, who is Pete Flores. And Senator Pete Flores is the chairman of the Senate Criminal Justice Committee.
Oh, yeah.
Very perfect. Thank you, Jesus. So I called Pete and I said, I need this list. And he said, I've never heard of it. And I said, me either, but it exists, so please help. So he found it. 24 hours later, he sent it to me. And I have found almost 100 books in schools that are on the prison list. And so they're so graphic with graphic illegal sex acts. So rape, incest, sex with animals, sex with dead bodies. We have them all. Our books in schools have all of those things. But if they have any of those things, they are prohibited. So they're on this list, prohibited. And so I go to schools, I check the schools, and I'm like, oh, you've got 9 books that criminals cannot access. Why are the minds of hardened criminals better protected than the minors in your school district? Shocking. Yes, you're speechless.
Yeah, a little bit. That is mental.
It's crazy.
It's messed up.
Yeah.
It's messed up. So this is what we're fighting. And I think the majority of people don't really understand the battle, right? I mean, they're busy. They're not, I think, and I used to be one, but I used to be a Christian that would go to church every Sunday. I mean, I wouldn't miss a Sunday. And I would praise God and commune with Him and worship Him. And then I would leave. And I would say, oh, see you next Sunday, Jesus. But what do you do for the other, 167 hours a week? Are you never seeking Jesus? Are you never engaged or listening to what He's saying? Or do you only reserve that for 1 hour Sunday? That was me for a long time. I thought I was a devout Christian. But what I've discovered in my battle, I've been to 157 school boards to speak to the school boards and bring attention to what is in their libraries. Many of them ask the librarians, is there any bad stuff in our libraries? And the librarians, of course, who bought it, they always say, no, not our library. But I have never found one clean library. I have looked in between public and school libraries. I've been to 157 districts, but those districts have at least 3 campuses, high school, junior high, elementary, if they're small. A lot of them have 10 or 15 high schools, many junior highs, and on and on. So I've been into, I'm guessing, maybe 1,000 libraries, school and public.
Wow.
I have not found one that didn't have this content.
And that's including things like elementary, which is just such young kids.
The elementary stuff is very demonic. I have a book, it's called Making a Baby for 3-year-olds. So you're like, okay, why do a 3-year-old need to know about making a baby? But it actually has pictures. And one of the really most disturbing parts is there's a full-grown man and another full-grown man totally naked in a shower together with a totally naked 2-year-old boy. So, fathers take baths with their, and so do mothers, by the way. But 2 grown men fully naked in a shower with a fully naked 2-year-old boy is very disturbing. But it's worse than that because it's in like a shower room, like a gym or something. And there's a bench right beside the shower, and there's a little girl watching. She's clothed, but she's watching. So, listen, Satan wants to desensitize our children to nudity, to group sex, to all of these things. And we were not paying attention. We, as Christians, even my Sunday Christian self, I wasn't paying attention. And so you always think it's someone else. It's somewhere else. It's not you or in your neighborhood. It's everywhere. I've had so many calls. I go on Rick Green's podcast periodically, and we just did it like 2 weeks ago. And so he plays it on Wall Builders and then on his tavern. We filmed it in the tavern, but he puts it on other areas also, other podcasts. And I've had almost 200 requests in the past week from people in other states, like Maryland, Michigan, Missouri, Kansas, Tennessee, Wyoming. I'm trying to remember all of them. People want this information because they want to check and keep their children safe. So there's a lot of people that are engaged and engaging, but I think it's still the remnant, obviously, because the vast majority of people, they just think that they think I'm some crazy lady. So I carry books and I just show them, and they're like, what?
Yeah.
It's shocking.
But I think something that's crazy too is that not only are people just kind of like ignoring the problem, but also like as a teen, it's become a trend. Like I can't pick up a book anymore. Like my friends might recommend it to me, but I'm like I still have to search through what might be in it because that's what everyone's reading, and there's like the big trend of book talk, and it's just full of complete garbage in all of these books. But it's not only is it like, oh, we're just gonna like not even think about it. It's like, no, we're gonna promote it, and it's like the front page of every Barnes and Noble or bookstore I walk in is like, come read these books, and it's just terrible. So how is it, fighting for this, what kind of backlash do you face, and how do you keep going with it? Like, what is your motivation to keep going whenever you are not only fighting against something that's ignored, but something that's a trend and that's popular and cultural?
So, the joy of the Lord is my strength, and the only thing I seek to do every day is to make Jesus happy. And if I do that, then all the rest takes care of itself. Not the content of the libraries, they're still going to be there. But as far as I cannot remove stuff from the library, I can only open eyes. And I was very discouraged in the beginning. And I was so discouraged because I was speaking at different school boards or public libraries, city councils, county commissions, and I could never find enough action. In other words, I was always disappointed. And so one night I'm complaining to Jesus and I'm like, listen, I'm working really hard because you've asked me to, but I'm so discouraged. I'm so discouraged because nothing's happening. I'm not effecting any change. And he said very clearly to me, Bonnie, like he says, Martha, like he said, your job is to open eyes. My job is to convict hearts. Oh gosh, you mean I'm not supposed to make them do what I want them to do, right? And so it gave me so much relief and peace to think, okay, I can go open eyes. He has to do the rest. And when I gave that burden back, I'm so much more peaceful.
Yeah.
So I just go in, I throw a little corn bombs, here's what's in your life. And people, some school boards won't let me speak. They stop me and they say, no, you can't say that. Some let me speak. Sometimes I've gone so many times to the Capitol and testified in favor of different bills that we need. And sometimes they let me say the bad words because they're bad words. They tell me it's inappropriate, and I'm like, yes, and we're all grown-ups. Imagine how the 12-year-olds think, this is not appropriate. And so I became much more peaceful and joyful just knowing that I'm not responsible. If school boards or public libraries or whatever, if they don't remove the books, if they leave them, that's up to them. God is telling me go and tell them, like Nehemiah or Jeremiah. Because Jeremiah's even better, right? Because he was always like, and nobody listened, but I can relate. So I just go and I read things and show them pictures of what is in their library, and then God has to convict their hearts. And even God sometimes can't convict their hearts because they're so, clutching the hand of Satan. And so that's not my problem. My problem is to do what God has asked me to do. And so now I'm much more joyful. But I tell you, another thing is that people, especially school boards, maybe all people, they have such a fear, they don't know what to do. So when I'm telling them and reading this to them, first they can't believe it's there. And then I take screenshots of each book in their catalog. So it's like, there it is on your online catalog. It's right there in this section. This
Proving that you didn't plant it.
Yeah, proving. And so I show them, and so first they have disbelief, and then they're shocked, and then they don't know what to do. So they do nothing. And I equate that, I just say they have fear of man, because a lot of them will tell me, well, we're going to get sued. And I said, okay, well, how many children do we sacrifice on the altar of fear? You are fearful of getting sued. 86% of things we worry about never happen. But even if it did happen to you, if you did get sued, you were being sued for righteous reasons. You're being sued to protect your children, the children in your community or in your school district. So how many children do we sacrifice at the altar of fear? How many? 1? 1,000? 10,000? And they just look at me because they don't know what to say. But they have a fear of man. They do not have a fear of God. If they feared God, well, it would be gone. All this stuff would be gone, right? Because you're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to stand before him one day. I do not want him to say to me, Bonnie, why didn't you work harder? Why didn't you work harder to save the children? He's not going to say that to me. I spend 4 or 5 days a week out. I'm gone, opening eyes, meeting with pastors, a lot of pastors. Many pastors are part of the problem. They don't necessarily want to stand up and shout from the rooftops because they consider it a cultural issue. And so they're saying, well, it's like abortion. They consider that a cultural issue, not a biblical issue. But truthfully, everything is biblical. If you have a biblical worldview, then it helps you to, you have a foundation and you're standing on that foundation. So, that's what I do.
Yeah, that's crazy. So our podcast is mostly for teens or people at our school. How would you say that they can get involved? Because it's a little bit different for us. We might not want to have to go read those books.
Yes.
That way we can testify against them.
You shouldn't.
We shouldn't go read those books. Everyone don't read them. But how could we practically help with this movement? Because it's something that definitely affects us as we're still in school and we're going to these libraries that have this stuff in them.
Right, and it's not just school libraries, because it's, everywhere in the public libraries as well. So what I would suggest to you and to your listeners is if they go and get a highly popular book, all your friends are saying, read this book, it's so great, right? And you pull that off the shelf, and you find content that pricks your conscience, you're like, oh, this is not right. Give it to your parents and say, Mom, Dad, this has content that I don't think I should be reading. And engage your parents to then go and request the school to remove that. And why? Well, this is why. They can all call me. I have book reports on most every book. I do find new books very often.
I'm sure.
So it's not just, is this mine?
Yes.
Oh my God. Thank you. I didn't even know.
Sorry.
Completely free.
Yes, thank you. So get engaged by not just putting it back on the shelf. Either tell your librarians, tell your teachers, and or tell your parents. This book has highly inappropriate content that it offended me, and I know that it's not biblical. I want to bring your attention to it. Now, a lot of them, I think there must be good librarians. I think there must be librarians who love Jesus. There's not very many, at least that I've discovered. But let them know, because maybe they do not know. And if they do not know, the book will disappear. If the book stays, they already knew. So that's one of the things that we tend to tolerate. We're supposed to be tolerant, right? And people say that you're a Christian, you're supposed to be tolerant. Well, yes, we can be tolerant, but we also, in righteousness, have to have discernment. And if God in our hearts plants morality. And after many years of ignoring morality, our morality no longer pricks our conscience. We don't really have a conscience. That conscience is the Holy Spirit, by the way. And so if you never listen to the Holy Spirit, well, you're not attuned to his voice. It's like Jesus. It's a still small voice. And we listen, and sometimes I say, God, can you repeat that louder? Because I don't know that I understood correctly. And he will. So don't tolerate things. That doesn't mean that you're judgmental or whatever. It just means that you enlist help from adults and say, I don't think this is right. I want to let you know that this cannot be right. I'm sure you didn't know that it's in the library. Let the librarian and your parents know. That's one thing I would say.
You're talking about morality, and I think it's something that's interesting that I've discovered. Me and my sisters are all really big avid readers, and you can see just the lack of any morality, because even in these books they have cute covers. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Oh yes, I have.
But especially for teens, or if it's a little rom-com or something, it's just a super cute little hand-drawn cover. It's cute and animated. It looks like a little TV show or something, and then you get into it and it's terrible.
Right.
But it's fully targeted at kids, which is crazy that they even go through all the work to make sure it seems appealing from the outside instead of having something that might reflect what's actually in the book itself.
That's right. It's very deceitful. Mm-hmm. So the cover and the description is very deceitful. And so you're in our Orlando County Library, the 17 books that the judge and the commissioners moved, they were eye level for children. In front of, there was 2 bean bags to sit on, and all of these books were right there, where they would turn around, and you look at the spine. One of the spine says, "Let's talk about it." That's the name of this bad book. But it was ombre style, and the book itself is a light mint green with ombre colors. I think if I was a 12-year-old girl again, that would be something that caught my attention. And it was big fat letters, not normal, just spines of a book.
Attention grabbing.
Yes. And so it was very attractive. And there were a lot of people in the front and the back cover, none naked. But inside there's none with clothes on. Every page is just nudity and just, very bad things. And so they are trying to get children to at least pull it off and open it. And what I say to school boards and also to our legislators, the children, when they open this book and look at the visual images, it literally rapes their mind. And the thing about becoming addicted to porn is that if a child or an adult, so many adults that I've listened to their interviews, they became addicted to porn at whatever age. I don't remember all the ages, but it changes the relationship that you have with other people. Those boys or girls, because it's both, they will never have a normal relationship, ever. So we're damaging them forever. And so many of them, when I've listened to their interviews, they're like, I got married and divorced 5 times because I couldn't, and so it's just the ripple effects of showing this harmful content to children. They're unknowable. We can't even know all of them. I listened to Ted Bundy's final interview. So you might not know who Ted Bundy is, but he was a serial killer in the 70s and 80s. And the night before he was executed, he invited Dr. James Dobson, who was a very big pastor at the time. He's still alive, but he's very old now, but very famous. He invited Dr. James Dobson to come in and interview him. So his final interview, the night before he was executed, and it is such a telling interview because he talks about how he became addicted to porn. He calls it softcore. He said, I found a magazine in my neighbor's trash when I was about 11, and that was all he needed for a while, for months and months or whatever time. That it gave him a high. It's called a porn high. So you get your high from this. It's like any drug. And so, but after a while, he says, I could no longer get a high from the softcore porn. So then he says he graduated to hardcore porn. He doesn't elaborate, so we don't know what it was exactly. But and that was fine for months and a long while. But even then, after that, it didn't work anymore. And so your body, when you are addicted, you need your high. So one thing that I have discovered, Texas Public Policy Foundation I asked them to do some research on pornography, the effects of pornography on the brain. And so they did not do research, but what they did was they went out and looked at everybody else's research and they thought there was already sufficient. So they sent me all of these things. Interestingly enough, there has been effects of heroin on the brain, the effects of cocaine, crack, meth, all these things. And then there was the effects of pornography on the brain. And they did this, different institutions did this, but up until somebody calculated a measurable effect of the minutes that pornography lasts on the brain, crack cocaine had been the most, you would shoot up a high and then down. It would dissolve or whatever the word is.
Drop off.
And it was something like 48 minutes. I think it was 46 or 48 minutes. Which is why when you see people, even you, probably outside of an HEB, a gas station, and they're begging and whatever, and they're shaking, it's because they need their fix. Whatever that fix is, they need it. And so when they measured the effects of pornography on the brain, it was 32 minutes. So every 32 minutes, someone needs their fix. So they're shaking it. Do you ever watch television and you're listening that there was a police officer that was arrested for looking at porn in his car, or a teacher at some school district arrested for looking at porn in their classroom or on their computer at work or their lap, whatever. And I always thought, can't you just wait until you get home? I mean, come on. No, they cannot. They literally cannot. They start shaking. They're just like, after 32 minutes, they can't wait 8 more hours. Impossible. So this is what we're cultivating. This is this whole culture of let's show kids inappropriate content with a lot of sexual themes at 3 years old. And then let's see what happens to them. It's an experiment.
It's a lifetime worth of these terrible effects started from such a young age.
Yes.
That's insane. And so I'm not very well educated on all the policies and stuff. Are there any policies in place at all for what is allowed to be given to these children, or is it just free range, or is it like not in check enough? Like, how did this even become allowed to happen?
Yes, that's a great question. So you mentioned a while ago that it's very hard to find good books, good, wholesome books that don't have bad content. You are totally right. So in order for a book in the last 5 years to be published by a regular publisher, I'm not talking about a Christian publisher, so the regular publishing companies, the big ones, it has to have either a CRT theme, critical race theory, where, you're racist. I can tell. Even if you don't think you are, you have racism because you're white. And, like I have a white fence around my house, and people are like, oh, well, you have a white fence. Well, that's because my windows were white, so it was a white fence. I mean, it's just like a match.
I had an extra can of paint.
And my dog is white too, by the way. It's terrible. We did have a chocolate brown dog before this lab, but
a little better.
A little better. But yes, I mean, if books do not have a theme of highly sexualized content or rape, I mean, the rape scenes, they're so graphic. It's scary. And why do we need to do that? Why do we need to add like all the details? Couldn't you just say, she was raped? I mean, maybe a little bit more detail, but not pages and pages. So when I started fighting this fight back in 2021 and 2022, I discovered something called the obscenity exemption. So 43 states have had it, and including Texas, and it is an exemption to prosecution if you display, distribute, or sell porn to children. If you are an educator in Texas, so a teacher, librarian, work at a school, you're an educator. You're in the educator, column. You have a defense to prosecution. You cannot be prosecuted. It shocked me. Like, what in the world? Why would a teacher ever need to display, distribute, or sell porn to children? And it was passed in Texas in 1973. And so in 2022, in the December of 2022, I wrote a letter to Governor Abbott, and I got 1,800 people to sign the letter, saying, please, we need to repeal this obscenity exemption. It's called an obscenity exemption. I still can't believe we have it. 43 states had it. 7 have never had it. And so 7 of the states that had it have already appealed it. So I was asking that in 2023, in the legislative session, in Texas, the legislature meets 140 days every other year. So starts in January, ends in June of this year, every odd year. And so if we don't get this done by June of this year, then we wait 2 more years. And so I sent him a letter. Nothing happened. I had 9 bills in the House and 4 in the Senate last session. 4 different senators and 9 different House members that wrote, some of them better than others, the bills that they wrote, but I would have taken any of them. None of them even got a hearing. Okay, you have to get a hearing, and then if it passes, then you go to the full House or the full Senate, and then to the other chamber. So it's a process, but none of them even got the first step, not even one of those 13. So this year, I guess starting in November of 2024, I wrote another letter to Governor Abbott. I had almost 8,000 people sign it, because now I know many more people. And so we sent it to the governor and the lieutenant governor and the attorney general. Please remove the obscenity exemption, repeal it, get rid of it, abolish it. Educators do not need the right to do any of these 3 things. So I was told that originally when it came to pass, it was because of anatomy books. So professors that were teaching anatomy needed to show, nudity and stuff. I understand that. But these books are not anatomy. These are not even close. And anything used for educational curriculum does not apply. So we can still get rid of this law and have a healthier education system for the children. And so this year, it passed the Senate first, one of my bills, and then it passed the House, And now Governor Abbott is going to sign it, I think next week, either next week or the next week. So praise God, right? It just takes, well, it's back to my telling God, you got to work faster, like, right? Because I want things really quickly. But God works in His time, not in my time or anyone else's time. His timing is perfect. And so that is one law, and that is one reason that all of this stuff has crept in to our libraries. It's not the only reason. The American Library Association is like the umbrella above the whole United States. Each state has their own library association, so like the American Library Association and then Texas Library Association. Each state has its own state library association. Very corrupt. They say that books should never be segregated by age. Books and movies, never by age. Well, I think that everybody can agree that there's an age limit of things that are appropriate, and there's an age limit where things are not appropriate. And so, but they push this concept, and they have something that they call the Library Bill of Rights that says, don't ever segregate. You let kids take anything they want, because some kids' brains develop faster than others. I mean, I agree with that. But there's still content that, I mean, I'm 57, my brain is not developed enough for the stuff I've been reading, right? So it's not for anyone. And so the other thing to remember is that these books are paid for with your tax dollars, your parents' tax dollars. So our tax money supports the schools, 100%. Nothing else supports the schools but tax dollars, and the public libraries. So I am offended by this stuff and think it doesn't belong, but yet I'm buying it. My tax dollars are being used to perpetuate this problem. And people say all the time, you know, you cannot control what my child reads. And I say, that's right. You are welcome to go to Barnes & Noble and buy your child as much smut as you want. But don't make my tax dollars buy it to harm their minds. Because that, you know, that's what's happening. And that's one of the arguments. There's just so many. But we will keep fighting, because even if something doesn't come this year, it will come maybe next legislative session. I have another bill that Senator Angela Paxton wrote this year. It passed the Senate already. It has to go through a committee hearing and then pass out of the committee to the full Senate, pass out of the full Senate, go to the next chamber. And they had a hearing in the House, but the House hasn't passed it. And we have about 10 more days, because the session is winding down now. The session's over, I think, on June 2nd. It's either June 2nd or June 3rd. That's it. It's right around the corner, in the blink of an eye. So it's not the strongest bill. It could have been stronger, but it will definitely help. And so we just keep going to the Capitol. We keep engaging. We keep fighting, even when we're tired. So
how does that, I mean, you have to read a lot of this in order to go and fight for that. Do you have any kind of method that you use to like kind of help make sure that you can keep going? Because I know that I feel like, you know, for myself or for most people at a certain point kind of be like, I can't even do this anymore. Like I need some kind of hope. Do you have like a certain system that you use when reading these or anything like that?
The very first book that I found that was just vile from cover to cover, I read it. I marked all these pages because I was showing my husband. Babe, you know, like he wasn't home when I was reading it, and I marked this page and that page, and I'm like, babe, I mean, like, look at this stuff. We couldn't believe it. We really could not believe it. I mean, it's really unbelievable. And so then I wanted to share it with other people, so I actually typed them out. I went to every page I had marked, and I wrote the name of the book, you know, whatever it was, and the author, and then page 12, this, and page 29 or whatever. I went through the whole book, and then I started making more and more and more. I've made probably 100 or 150 myself, but I know a lady, there was a group of 2 mothers in Florida that made probably like 900, and they posted them online and they gave access to anybody. And so that was up for a while. They just closed the website not too long ago. But a friend of mine copied everything onto a USB for me, so I still have all of those. Because then it means I don't have to waste my time reading. Someone else has done it. There's a lady in California. Well, she used to live in California. Her name's Karen England. And she just moved to Tennessee because she couldn't stay in California anymore. I don't blame her. But she also has a whole bunch of reports that she's done. And so I'm not alone in the battle, even though sometimes it feels like it. There's people all over that are fighting because sometimes because they heard me on Rick Green's podcast or someone else's, or sometimes it's just because their child brought it to them and said, Mom, look what's in this book. And so there are many people fighting. So in the very beginning, after I finished that first book, I told God, okay, God, I feel like you're telling me to do this for you, but this is very harmful content. So I will do it if you protect my mind, because he's the protector, right? He's the only one. And so I can honestly say I have never once thought about any vile content. I go to bed or whatever, I'm out. I sleep peacefully, joyfully, and I know that he's protecting me. He's built a hedge of protection around my body, but also my mind, so that I can bring awareness to others. Wow. So we have lots of books, and I can go. I was testifying at the Capitol not too long ago, and it was about the 10 Commandments bill. So there's a bill in Texas. Lots of states have done it, I think 23. But Texas has a bill that says that every classroom in Texas, every classroom, kindergarten through,
12th grade,
every classroom, has to have the 10 Commandments posted. So this Democrat, I was going to testify, and I had my speech, 2 minutes, I had my speech all written. I never just speak off the cuff. I could, but I don't, because I want, I pray, okay, what do you want me to say? So I wrote my whole speech. And when I got there, and one of the people that were ahead of me, their testimony, they were, saying what I was saying. And then one of the Democrats on the committee said, how do you justify thou shalt not commit adultery? How do you justify introducing that to young kids? Because you're going to have to start talking about what adultery is and what it means. How can you justify that? So I threw out my speech and I started writing, because I know all these books in my head. Okay, this book says this book says that. And it doesn't just talk about adultery. It glorifies it, encourages it. This one book, talks about how, adultery can be a great thing, because you can solidify your relationship with your husband. If you're finding, enjoyment elsewhere, it will make your marriage last longer. It's very demonic. This is not truthful at all. But yet, again, we're planting these thoughts. And so I was like, you don't think we should introduce... Really, that's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear it.
I agree.
I agree. Let me tell you why. And he was like, well, I've never seen that book. I said, I'll bring it to your office. And so, anyway, it did pass.
Wow.
That's amazing.
It did pass. I don't know that he voted for it, but that's okay.